So, given the crowd here, I thought I'd make it a little bit more of a conversation. So, how many of you know about Hivemapper or have heard about Hivemapper? All right, so I will be very, very brief in terms of just giving a quick overview of what Hivemapper is. Then I'll talk a little bit about the journey as to how we ultimately got to where we are today. I'll share some stats and some customers and all that kind of good stuff. And then I thought we'd just open up for questions and make it a conversation. I want to hear what's on your mind as well. So Hivemapper, very simply, is you buy this camera from us, this dash cam. It looks and smells like a lot of other dash cams on the market, but it is designed specifically for the purposes of mapping, right? So the positional accuracy, the stereo depth cameras, a bunch of the other technologies that's inside of that dash cam is designed for the purposes of mapping, but it also serves as a dual use if you just need a dash cam, right? If you've ever been in an Uber car or a Lyft car, whatever it is, oftentimes you see the dash cams from a safety and reliability perspective. It also provides a lot of those core capabilities. So you buy this device and you just do what you normally do, which is you drive, right? And if you drive a ton like an Uber driver or a FedEx driver or Amazon delivery driver, it's great, right? We want people who are especially inside of urban cities, seeing many, many different parts of that city on a consistent basis, right? What we don't love is like long haul truckers, going from Chicago to San Francisco, less interesting. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is. And so what's happening with all that imagery is we use the imagery, but fundamentally what's more interesting to us is what is that camera seeing, and can what we refer to as the map AI, can it actually detect that and classify that and then position that, right? So whether it be road construction work, an accident, a speed limit sign, a turn restriction, all the things that actually make up a map, that's what's really the core interesting parts of what we see from the imagery perspective. So there's the eyes, which is the camera, and then there's the brains, which is the map AI part. In addition to that mode of contribution, which is the driver, there's another mode of contribution which we refer to as AI trainers. And so these are people who are sitting behind their computer, mostly doing data labeling, right? So they're effectively training these AI models to be able to see all these different types of objects. And a speed limit sign looks different than here in the US than the EU, that looks different in other parts of the world. And so the models have to be trained on a per country basis. And they're also doing like a lot of map quality assurance types of tasks, like, hey, we think this is potentially wrong, that kind of stuff. So there's about 35,000 or 40,000 of those people who are at their desk every single week who are contributing from an AI data labeling perspective. All of this data then gets repackaged into various data products that we sell, okay? And there's 3 major customer groups that we're focused on. So today we have B2B customers. So if you never use Google Maps or Waze, you are still interacting with Maps data when you pull up the Uber app, right? When you pull up the Lyft app, when you check on a package from FedEx, whether you see their user interface or not, behind the scenes, all those companies are using Google, paying them for all of that data. So millions of businesses pay Google Maps. So that's one customer segment. We have customers in that segment. The other customer segment that we're focused on is automotive, but specifically not like the infotainment map that you see, but the map that actually helps autonomous driving. So there's everything from robo-taxis like Waymo and Cruise. One of those is actually a customer of ours. And then all the way down to like what's commonly referred to as ADAS, right? So that would be like assisted driving capabilities like a Ford Blue Cruise and so forth. So maps, especially ones like ours that are incredibly fresh, are a key ingredient into that product. And then so we have customers like that in that group as well. The third and last customer segment is actually building a full-blown consumer navigation app. We're not there yet. We'll probably be there next year. The reason that we have a better and a more competitive product than the likes of Google or Waze is because we actually know what's happening, right? So let's take a road segment. This road over here, traffic usually flows at like 35 miles an hour. If all of a sudden, Google knows that obviously, all of a sudden traffic starts to flow at 10 miles an hour, well, they know that as well, but what they don't know is why, because they don't have eyes, and so they can't actually understand what's happening. Is it okay, is it a car crash? Is it a 3-car crash? Is it a little fender bender? Those two things are very, very different in terms of navigation, right? Is there a flood? Is there road construction that's impacting that's not gonna be gone for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? And so our ability to have these eyes all over the world is a fundamental difference in terms of how we can actually build and experience maps. All right, so that's a little bit about Hivemapper. We actually have customers, major customers doing hundreds of thousands of dollars every single quarter with us, and more on the way. And so maybe that's a little bit unique for the DePIN world. And that's always been a slam, and I think that's a fair criticism of DePIN, is that we haven't yet gotten as many customers and many demand in, and I think that we're trying to really differentiate from many others in that regard. But look, it was a long, winding road to get to where we are today. So we started the project in 2016, and we started without crypto with this mission of how do we build an incredibly new, fresh global map. And the last great global map to really get scale was Waze. That was 2012, right? Google Maps started in 2006. I started in the world of mapping at Yahoo Maps in 2006. At that time, we had about 90% market share. Google Maps was just starting to kind of grow. And then they launched Google Street View. They launched a lot of their own data collection programs. And it was clear to me sitting at Yahoo that unless you had that kind of money to go and basically crawl the physical world, that you weren't going to be able to compete. So fast forward to 2015, what I saw was that the sensor technology, right, all the cameras, was ubiquitous enough and high quality enough that you could crowdsource, which is key from a cost perspective, but a high quality map, right? So that's the combination that is really, really hard to achieve. Crowdsource, right, leverage all of us to help build the map, but do it while maintaining an incredibly high quality map. That's always been the Achilles heels of all of these crowdsourced maps, is maintaining consistency and quality and coverage all over the world. So we started off actually with drones that did not work for a whole bunch of legal issues. Battery technology didn't work. We then said, okay, we're gonna go down to street level. We tried with iPhone devices and Android devices. That didn't work. There was technology issues. The positional accuracy of that device is not good enough. But even more than that, from a contributor perspective, every time you got into the car, you effectively had to open up the app and hit a button, okay? That is a killer. And so what we saw was we attracted all these people, and then after about a month or two, they would just all leave, right? Because you just can't keep up. You're like, hey, I gotta go to the restaurant, I go to the bar, meet my friends, I'm gonna rush, drop off my kids here or there. Like the last thing that you're gonna do is like hit a button in an app and hit record, right? That's just mentally a lot of effort. So we said, okay, we're gonna do this dash cam, and we initially started off with a third-party dash cam, and it worked better in terms of solving that friction, but we needed to run our own AI models on the device. And it was just, the third-party devices that we're using were fairly closed systems, and so it was really hard to build on a reliable platform. So this is like 2018, 2019. We're almost out of cash, actually, at this point. We got actually like a $2.5 million contract to effectively go build the very, very first version of the Hivemapper dashcam. And we built 100 of them, and it worked, right? And so it worked from a positional accuracy perspective. It worked in terms of making the experience really, really passive. We were able to actually run Map AI on the device. We built about 100 of them. We deployed it to Los Angeles, Lagos, Nigeria, and Manila. And boy, did it work. And so we're like, okay, this is really interesting. This is really cool. It's clearly working from a product and technology perspective. But what we needed to see was from a business model perspective, all right, like I can pay people cash, but guess what? Google has a lot more cash than I'll ever be able to raise, right? And so that's when I saw Helium. I thought their business model was really, really, really clever. And so we said, okay, we're gonna add this crypto layer. 2021, we raised about $19 million, launched with the devices November 2022, 3 days before FTX blew up. It was a good time to launch. And fast forward to November 2023, we mapped about 10% of the global road network. Fast forward to today, I think we're at roughly 21%. For those of you who may have seen, we launched pre-orders for our next generation device, the B, and we have about a back order list of about 31,000, 32,000 devices. On the customer side, I shared a little bit with you guys in terms of some of the customers. We have real serious customers. Funny enough, like a lot of people say, like, oh, is crypto an issue in terms of signing these, large contracts? Like, so far, like, no one cares. No one, I mean, fundamentally what they care about is, like, do you have the coverage? Is your data incredibly high quality? Is it fresh? And from a privacy perspective, are you respecting privacy in a really thoughtful way, right? We get a lot more questions about privacy regulation than we get about crypto. Fundamentally, customers are there to buy a great product. They're not there to buy a crypto token. And that's the way it should be. All right. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of overview about what Hivemapper is, kind of our journey in terms of how we ultimately got here. But I'm kind of happy to open it up to questions now and kind of make it more of a conversation. Who's going to go first? Oh, there we go. Go ahead.
Just curious on how does the reward system work for individuals who set this up in their vehicle?
Yeah.
Is it like proportional to how much data they provide?
Yeah.
Urban area versus suburban?
Yeah. Okay, so when we first launched, a lot of people came into the project assuming that it was like, 1 kilometer, no matter where you drive it, pays X amount of honey tokens, and it's like very flat. And it doesn't work that way at all. And we got a lot of shit for that, But I still think what we did is the right approach, where there's a couple of different layers to this. So one is, what region of the world are you driving in, right? Just if you're driving in like a Tokyo or a Seoul or a Chicago or a London, there's just more economic activity happening in those regions. And so there is just inherently more value of the data that's being collected there versus, mapping in some little town in Indiana or something like that. So that's one level. The other level is if you go down into the city, right? So if you're, let's say, in Los Angeles, and all you do is drive the 405 every single day, like 100 times a day, you're not gonna earn as much as somebody who is driving into like all the nooks and crannies of a city, right? Like an Uber driver or a FedEx driver, right? So that's the other dimension. And then there's a third dimension, which is, where are you mounting it? So if you're mounting it interior versus exterior, you will probably earn a little bit less than somebody who is mounting it exterior. So there's multiple kind of dimensions to the rewards in terms of how they work, but there's one overriding principle, which is like, what value are you delivering to the map, right? Both data quality, coverage, freshness. That's what's our guiding principle, and I think it's been a pretty good guiding principle, even as kind of we've made changes to the reward mechanisms. And I think that like we have to accept as an industry, it obviously is a marketplace and it's a dynamic environment, and there will inevitably be changes, right? I think this idea that it's like static, and it's static forever is kind of crazy. I mean, Uber and Lyft, they're making changes, right? They're adapting to just the market environments, what's happening. And I think the same thing is true for all of the DePIN projects. That's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
What additional features or sensors are coming up in 2.0?
Yeah, so I think we still have a lot of work cut out for ourselves in terms of extracting maximum value from the imagery. I don't think that, imagery is your eyes, right, in a lot of ways. And so the way I think about it is, the amount of things that we see, right, through that sensor, through the camera, relative to the amount of things that get added to the map, right now it's maybe 3%, okay? So there's just an enormous amount of like additional data that we're not yet extracting out and adding to the map that will take us a long time to get there. And I want to go do that before I add a new sensor, right? I've definitely thought about adding like a 360 camera on top of your roof. The market for that is obviously a lot smaller than the market for people who are just buying this dash cam. But I think it is interesting, and it does open up some additional use cases, but that's probably much further down the road.
One comment too on mobile dev. So since 2016, there's now basically what's called activity detection is on iOS and Android. So that may alleviate a little bit of the users actually having to, do some of those manual steps. So that's something you might keep in mind if it opens up additional users for you guys.
Thanks.
What was the rationale between going for creating your own map instead of just plugging your data into existing map plays or Google Maps?
Well, I don't think Google would allow us to plug into their map. We do use, there's other open source maps, and we have to be a little bit careful because there's some like legal differences or between what we're allowed to do with them and what they would want us doing with them. So we do use kind of some other open source data to supplement our maps. So it's not like we're starting from scratch. But fundamentally, I think the way those systems, if you talk to anyone at Google Maps and like anyone who like real serious has been there for a while, they're fairly rigid systems, right? They're highly centralized, they're very, very rigid. So if somebody comes to them and says, hey, I want you guys to build a better map of Mexico City, and I want like higher refresh in terms of Google Street View, for them to do that, that's like both organizationally, but also in terms of cost, you're talking about like tens of millions of dollars need to be shifted around to make that decision. So I think that it's really hard, like when you're dealing with that kind of system or organization, that's like 15, 18 years. It's pretty hard for a new thing to like shift thing versus just create something from scratch that's like more organic, more decentralized, more flexible, more cost effective, et cetera, than try to like influence that thing. Because if I felt like I could influence that thing, I'd probably like get a job there and go do that there, but I don't think I can. Is that it? Thank you guys. Appreciate it.